Well, scientists are turning rats into detectives now, being trained to sniff out tuberculosis.
And it takes more than 1 million lives every year. Channel 3's Caitlin Nuclo explains in this week's Wellness Wednesday.
Scientists in Tanzania are using rats to sniff out tuberculosis, thanks to their superior sense of smell.
These are special cells within the lining of our nasal passages which pick up on scents. Rats tend to have 50% of the lining covered by the scent receptors, while humans only have about 5%.
It is these receptors that enable the rats to detect scents faster, with the potential to save lives.
The conventional laboratory techniques can take anywhere from 2 hours to even 14 days per sample, while the rats would be able to accomplish testing of 50 samples within 2 hours.
And researchers say the rats are accurate. Their studies show the animals' smell test can be even more accurate than standard bacteria culture tests. Also,
they can easily identify tuberculosis in people living with HIV, keeping in mind that these people living with HIV, it's very difficult to be diagnosed by the standard test.
Tuberculosis killed nearly 200,000 people living with HIV in 2021. Scientists hope the World Health Organization will approve this method of TB testing soon. Researchers say the accuracy of the rats compared to culture tests was 75%. The goal is 90%. That's your Wellness Wednesday report. I'm Caitlin Nuclo, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.